Hey folks, Chris Rohter at Pliant at the Gartner IT Symposium and Expo 2022, joined by my colleague and CEO of Pliant, Vess Bakalov. Hey Vess.
Hey Chris, how are you doing?
Great, thanks. You know, Gartner, if they do anything, they define spaces well. They find terminology that folks use, right? So one of the words that they use to describe the world that we live in is AI. Talk to us about AI in your context.
Sure. So AI is one of those things that you don't necessarily associate with API-first hyper-automation, but in reality, AI and automation really go together like hand in glove. In the end of the day, we drive data to AI, and when AI makes decisions, which is what it's really good at, well, we make them happen. We actuate them in the real world. I just had a great conversation with a prospect. He was in government, and what he was talking about was 911 emergency services, which has, at first sight, nothing to do with AI or hyperautomation. But their issue is, how do I get the most important phone call on top of my queue? Now, imagine a pile-up on the interstate. The first 5 calls, very important. We need to know how many cars, anybody hurt, all these things. We need to get that. After the first 5 phone calls, we probably already have units en route. The next 10 phone calls by the rubberneckers, which we never do when we drive by accidents, we never slow down to look, never. Not so important, right? By that point of time, another person having a heart attack on the other side of the city, much more important phone call that should be escalated above this. Well, that's a pretty good use case for AI. You can drive the data into the algorithm. Once we have geolocation, we can say, okay, well, in this area we already have response. We can now focus on other phone calls, and we can sort of begin to drive those down the call ladder. Pliant can help integrate the AI algorithms with the phone systems and make some of those things happen. We can also look into other parts of city governance or government governance and ensure that, as for example, we get more and more units involved in a certain large-scale situation, we can start activating code trees and getting folks in overtime situation to come and respond. So oftentimes, things that are completely unrelated, when you have the power to connect your systems to talk to each other, you can make things happen to really affect the quality of life and maybe even save life in them.
It's a pretty compelling story. One of the things that I heard in there that really jumped out at me, right? So I've been working at Pliant for some time, and a lot of the conversations here and elsewhere really are around network or IT or infrastructure. But when you're talking about this, it's a life-saving, game-changing thing, right? But it involves infrastructure, it involves network, but it involves something more. So I think a lot of people think about Pliant maybe as network automation. What's your take on Pliant, and what are the areas where we really can help automate, integrate, and connect the business?
Well, look, I mean, first and foremost, networking was built to connect people, right? I mean, we shouldn't forget that. I mean, our phone network starting with, and then network and internets and everything else, it needs to put us together, and sometimes we forget that online, but it is meant to make us closer to each other and help each other. But Pliant really does that to a large extent. We really help you get the benefit of the network effect for your API ecosystem. So your applications talking to each other is a very powerful thing, and obviously in our evolving SaaS world, where we have many applications, many platforms, exponentially more actually. Once we get them talking to each other to get business processes, when we get organizational processes implemented seamlessly, that network effect has exponential value. And Pliant is the system to drive that.
That's incredible. Thanks for entertaining that. All right, folks, to learn more about Pliant, visit pliant.io today.